everybody. Welcome to this episode of Rush Roots. Today we have Tim. And Tim, why don't you tell us who you are and where you're from?
Hi, everybody. My name is Tim Durling. I hail from the Great White North. I'm actually in New Brunswick on the eastern part of Canada, which is right on the border of the state of Maine.
Awesome.
All right. Awesome. All right. So how did you hear about Rush? What got you into them and what kept you around? Tell us your Rush roots.
So I was born in 1974, and when I was about 11, that's really when I started paying attention to popular music, like listening to Top 40 radio and the weekly countdowns, Rick Dees, Casey Kasem, and then really figuring out who sings what and starting to take in all this information. And I was vaguely aware that there was a band called Rush, and I can't really make it any more vague than that, but I think I may have read something in a TV guide. I just knew there was a band called Rush, and that's really all I knew. I mean, I knew that there were like a universe of musicians out there, right? So it was all very new to me. But the first Rush song I heard was on my Christmas break in 1985. I was listening to the Top 40 station that I listened to all the time. And at that point, they had a nightly top 5 request countdown. And so that was on at about 11 o'clock my time. And that's later than I was normally up but since it was Christmas break, I was allowed to stay up a little bit later. And because of that, I heard the Big Money Monday to Friday all week long. And I thought it was a cool song, but it really didn't trigger anything, because at that point, I mostly just recorded songs on the cassette tapes off the radio. I didn't have many actual albums at that point, but that was definitely the first Rush song I ever heard. So, I've always liked the song. I've always had a real soft spot for it, because that was it. That's where it started. And kind of a really cool follow-up to that. It's about a month later, Saturday night, and I was just changing channels, trying to find something to watch. So you have to keep in mind, this was early 1986, and I lived in a small town in eastern Canada, and we only had what we called country cable, which basically meant about 10 channels. Like the television literally went up to number 13. That was it. Yep. So there was nothing on channel 1. Yep. So not all the channels were used, right? At that point in time, I think it was channel 8. I'm quite sure it was channel 8. Nothing was on that. That was, not assigned anything. So I'm check, like on a manual channel changer. I saw something on channel 8 just for a second, like, oh, there's something on channel 8. I turned it back. It was this very strange video of a skeleton, and there's little people inside the skeleton. I realized it was a music video. And so I'm watching it. And the label came on at the end. Of course, it was Mystic Rhythms, but it was Much Music, which is Canada's MTV. Canada's MTV, it went on the air in August of 1984. So it was about 3 years after MTV went on the air. And a little piece of trivia, I've learned this later on. The very first video Much Music played when they went on the air was The Enemy Within. Oh, which was probably quite recent at the time.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was so excited. It was like we had 24-hour music videos. That was unheard of, because up until then there'd be like a half an hour show here, an hour-long show here. It was a different. Right. It was just so completely different, and people that grew up with the internet just wouldn't understand how significant this was. And it was very significant, because Much Music was very supportive of Canadian artists, old and new. And I know that I would not have been exposed to Rush's music at the age that I was that early had it not been for them, because within the next year and a half, I remember seeing Closer to the Heart, Tom Sawyer, Vital Signs, Subdivisions, Countdown, Distant Early Warning, Body Electric, Red Sector A, and of course, Big Money and Mystic Rhythms. Subdivisions and Distant Early Warning were probably the videos that got the most play. Those were definitely the most popular videos. So I started, just like I'd listen to tape songs off the radio, I'd record videos on the VHS tapes. I had a ton of VHS tapes, interviews, and stuff like that. I got their music. It was nothing like anything else I liked, and still, really, in a lot of ways, they still aren't. I just liked them instantly, and I've just never not liked them. I just thought they were, even though I knew deep down that they were never considered to be cool, I thought they were cool. I
Yeah.
thought their music was cool and just so utterly unique. And aside from a couple of my friends that got into the band because of me, it was literally years before I met anybody else that was a Rush fan. Like it was, it's funny because I'd see these concert videos, and obviously they had fans. They had a lot of fans. I didn't know any of them, you know, not in my little neck of the woods. So okay, so the next significant thing was like on my 13th birthday. So this was in September 1987. I got my very first dual cassette recorder. This again was a big deal because now you could make copies of cassettes. In my local library, this sounds so old. I mean, it sounds way older than the 80s. But my local library had cassettes that you could take out just like you could take out books. And one of them was Grace Under Pressure. Now, I already knew 3 of the songs on it because of the videos. So I took it out and I made a copy of it. So Grace Under Pressure was the first Rush album that I heard in its entirety. The first Rush album I actually owned belonged to an uncle of mine who let me have a few of his old tapes. I remember going to his basement and he had some old tapes. They were all from like the early 80s. And I said, can I borrow these? And he said, if you can find any tapes down there you like, you can keep them. Which was like, you know, when you get so much for allowance, and like that was Christmas, right? Christmas came early. And one of them was Permanent Waves. Now this, it seems strange to me, so it's going to sound even more strange to talk about. I probably didn't listen to it for a good couple of months after taking it home because I didn't know any songs off it, believe it or not. But if you think about it, there are no videos for Permanent Waves. Right. They did videos for Farewell to Kings and the Hemispheres album, and then from everything Moving Pictures on. There are no video clips, which is an odd thing. You'd think they'd have shot video clips for like Spirit of Radio and Free Will like they did for the previous songs, just soundstage, but they didn't. But it didn't matter because I owned a Rush album. Like to me, that was some serious cred. And right around Christmas again in '87, I'm going to mention Much Music again because they showed a 1-hour special on the band called Rush Hour. And this is actually, you can go off YouTube and see what looks like a really bad copy of this that was ripped off somebody's VHS tape. I learned a lot of basic information about the band from this. Like this answered, I just didn't know much about them at all because I bought tapes back then. I bought the rock magazines like Circus and Hit Parader, but they never wrote about Rush, or they didn't write about Rush then at that point. So that was really useful for me to have seen that when I did. And I get Signals that year for Christmas too. So you know, that's always been a favorite of mine. So between that point and June of 1989, slowly but surely, I filled in the entire Rush collection on cassette because that was my format of choice. And since then, bought every album as it came out. Those are my Rush roots.
It's awesome.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. All right. Well, why don't you tell us, you know, when and where your first show was?
My one and only time that I was privileged to see Rush was the tour right behind me, R30. August 22nd, 2004 at the Molson Amphitheater in Toronto. Mind-blowing. There they were, live, you know. So glad I got to go. But unfortunately, unfortunately, it's the only time I get to see them, but at least I got to see them.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is great that you got to see them. They're definitely really special as a live band. Yeah. All right. So, what was your first favorite song and your first favorite album, and how does that differ from your favorite song and favorite album today?
I think about that back in the day. It was probably Subdivisions because, like I said, that was one of the videos that they played a lot. And it may have changed here and there over the years, but now it's back to Subdivisions. There's no question in my mind. And even though I liked the song melodically, I didn't realize as I was living Subdivisions at that time, you know, at the age of 13, 14, those awkward teenage years. But it's only been, you know, in my advanced years that I realized, man, that was me. No wonder it wasn't just the music was very compelling, but there was something about the lyrics that were compelling too. So yeah, that's my favorite. Now, his favorite album is, and always will be Moving Pictures. Oddly enough, when I talked about getting all of the Rush albums, Moving Pictures was actually the last one. That was the last one. I didn't really get them in any order. I just, here's this one, here's that one, here's this one. But Moving Pictures was the one that finished up first album through Show of Hands at the time. And from the very beginning, I loved that one. That just was elevated above everything else, and everything else was pretty much excellent to begin with. What the funny thing was about that is that Rush Hour special I mentioned, they showed some clips, but most of them were just parts of videos, and they showed like really small part, like the chorus, one chorus from Limelight, and I remember thinking, I need to hear this whole song. I'd never heard it.
Wow.
It wasn't until I got the tape, so almost 2 years later, until I actually heard Limelight for the first time. And I always, when people say they're just like young kids are just getting into stuff now, and I'm like, I'm so jealous. You get to hear this for the first time, and be blown away all over again. So Subdivisions and Moving Pictures.
Cool.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll wrap with this question. Why don't you tell everyone watching where they can find you on Instagram or, in your case, YouTube, in case someone wants to reach out to you and get to know a little bit more about your Rush roots, or perhaps become Rush friends with you.
So in 2014, I started a YouTube channel called Tim's Vinyl Confessions, and that's my handle on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. They all have this pretty much the same content. I do a new video every week, and I probably have done more Rush videos than any other band, although there's lots of other stuff that I talk about too.
Sure.
I really enjoy doing it. It's basically 70s and 80s rock, and if anybody's interested in checking it out, I appreciate the follows, and yeah, have a lot of fun.
Cool.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks very much for your time, Tim. Everyone watching, feel free to reach out to Tim if interested, and take care, everybody.